Welcome to the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast, where we share real-life experiences for successful Caribbean property entrepreneurs. Learn about their successes, challenges, and strategies to help you create your plan for financial freedom. Now let's get started.
Welcome to episode 4 of Caribbean Property Investing Podcast. We want to thank you for staying tuned and following and enjoying the show so far. Thank you very much for the feedback. I remember we're available on all podcast platforms, including all social media platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and on the web at caribbeanpropertyinvesting.com. Today we have a very exciting show for you. As we take our listeners through the property investing journey, we explore all facets within the spectrum. And today we have what I consider to be a very common and practical way of getting onto the property ladder and becoming a property investor. Today we have with us a very good friend of mine, Mr. Daron Charles, who is actually a contractor for Structure Inc., but he didn't always start from that position. So welcome to the show, Daron.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we get right to it. Why don't you tell the audience, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, your background.
All right. Well, my name is Daron Charles, owner of Structure Inc. and my second brand, Villa Pourier, short-term rentals. All right. So before Structure Inc., Villa Pourier, I used to be the property manager for Brand Dahe. There are two commercial buildings in the north. One at Bois d'Orange called the Orange Park Commercial Center. So I started there. Then Mr. I built another property in Rodney Bay, right opposite the Harbour Club. And I became as well the property manager for that building as well. Yeah, that's how I initially got started into the property field.
Now, Mr. Brandi is a well-known commercial property investor. In fact, one of the largest. If we were to perhaps look at the entire island, probably he has the widest scope, whereas some other commercial investors would have been focused in the north. He's both north and south. What was that experience like being a property manager for a commercial enterprise? What was that like?
Well, boy, to be honest with you, it was a difficult task. First and foremost, I deal with, for example, at a Bois d'Orange building, I had about 20 different tenants. So that's 20 different characters you have to deal with. Then moving forward, we went to the Rodney Bay building. We had an additional, I think, 15. So in total, we have 35 different characters. So it's not an easy task, but if you put your mind to it, I mean, you just have to understand what the people want and execute.
What would you say was maybe the most common cause of complaint, or the most common reason your commercial tenants will be calling you as a property manager?
Well, two of them. One, lack of payment. Secondaries would be renovations, maintenance. Yeah, that's one of the calls that we get most often is the maintenance, air conditions, bathrooms. Pretty much basic stuff.
I happen to know Mr. Dye as well. Always been open with giving information and offering assistance. What would you say, were some of the key things you actually learned from him as your boss, as the property landlord, commercial property landlord?
Right. Well, first and foremost, it started as just being my boss. Then it grew into mentorship, right? Because of him, fundamentally, as the reason I started construction and beginning to acquire property for myself. Yeah.
From my vantage point, when we met, it was through a realtor, a very prominent realtor on island, who when she brought us together, myself, but you, another colleague of ours, and myself, and she said that it was important for her to make us all meet, and she's been wanting to do that for a long time because she thought that there was some value in the three of us bringing our heads together and sharing our knowledge and experience, because we all had something complementary. We discovered, after speaking, we discovered that, in fact, she had sold a property for each of us. And so she had spent time with us and getting to know us. that really showed me the importance and the benefit of the networking. We met once a week, Saturday mornings. We had coffee, had light breakfast, and we shared a lot. What did you think? When she invited you, and subsequent from that time to now, to how the relationship that has developed. What are your thoughts on that whole idea?
Well, it was something she constantly reminded me of. She wanted me to meet yourself and our other friend, because she figured your background, mine, and the other one would tie in together in the whole property race, if I should use that word. Um, so initially, when she first brought it up a couple of times, I was a little bit reluctant because for me, basically, I am my own brand, so I was a little bit reluctant as to joining the meetings. But after we met for the first time, your mindset, my mindset, and our call is basically the same thing. We all wanted to be financially free. Yeah. In essence, we want to live freely. And that was one of the best things that happened because from then, our friendship grew past property investments. And it became like a brother kind of relationship that we have now. Yeah. So I think it all worked out in the end.
And we'll talk more about that a little later on. But now we need to start talking about and getting into. Tell us, how did you end up in property investment? Because remember, you were a property manager for a large
Correct.
commercial business, and then you ventured
Mhm.
into property investing. How did you start? What was your first project?
Um, so the first project was in Bonte. I acquired a piece of land. I went through the rigors of the bank, getting, all these kind of documents for them to fund a piece of land. My first
So,
ever first project. So I bought the land. I sat on it for a while, knowing well that I wanted to build a structure, but not necessarily take a mortgage for 25 years. I'd already committed to like a 9-year mortgage on the land. So in my mind, that was the maximum I was willing to allow somebody to have a stronghold on me. So when I first bought it, I spoke to Mr. Dahe, he saw it, and he gave me sort of guidance, right? So he had a whole crew of construction guys. Because the interesting thing about Mr. Dahe, whatever property that he buys, land, albeit, he would develop it himself. So he already has this vast array of workers, engineers, plumbers, electricians. So I piggybacked on him for that. It took me about the better part of a year and a half, I would say, to complete the structure, right? So after I completed the structure, I moved in. You're feeling good. Basically, you have a home. Well, it wasn't that big. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and you owe the bank primarily some money, but basically just on the land, right?
because you
So
build the house over time, of your pocket over time.
what was that? A year and a half. But from start to finish, it took me about a year and a half because I would build it out of pocket. Whatever monies I have, I save it, I buy blocks. It was, and the labor charge wasn't as expensive because, as I said, I used Mr. Dyer's crew to assist me.
Mhm.
So my labor was, moderate. Yeah, so that's how it all began.
And then so you're in your home now. At that time you were married
Correct.
already at that time.
No,
So,
no,
so but you were single. You weren't married at that time.
single man.
Okay, fine. So what happens next with that property? When do you start thinking of, okay, a next move? When you get restless, what happens then?
So interestingly enough, one day, right? So let's take it back. At the Orange Park Commercial Center, we had Remax, a big real estate company, renting from us, right? So there's that. So Mr. Dyer posed a question to me one day. He said to me, well, he asked me how much I was into the house, how much my cost. And I told him that. And he said to me, so why not sell it? Let me tell you something. I couldn't understand at that point what he was trying to say. But all I
Yeah.
knew I was just angry. Because to me, I have a house, the prestigious area, one can argue, only owing on the land, right? And there's
Yeah.
this man asking me to sell this. At one time, you get comfortable. So I already have that. That's the first step. And most persons, when they have their first home, that's it. They don't think of, selling it, flipping it, or whatever. They just decide, I have this for 30, 40, 50 years, that's it. So when he broached that question to me, I didn't want to show him I was upset because at the end of the day, he's still my employer. So I thought about it. It took me like a week and a half. I thought, and I put it in the back of my head. Then after 2 weeks, he came back to me and said, me, did you make a decision? So you're going to sell? Again, I was infuriated. So I'm like, but why is this man trying to tell me to sell that I don't owe much in the next, I think, 6 years? I would have been free from the bank on the land loan. So I'd have my house debt free. I could put my feet up. So, but he kept on at me. So I said to her, you know what? Just to make him, like to just quiet him down a bit, I called the agent at Remax, and they set up an appointment. They came to see the property. They gave me some form to sign. At that time, I really didn't even read because in my mind, that doesn't make much sense. So I signed the form and I went around my merry way. A week after that, I got a call from the agent. He was like, Mr. Charles, we got some feedback and somebody wants to view your house. So I'm like, all right. I mean, I taken it for granted, no problem. So I went to the house. At that time, it was on pillars, right? So the downstairs has not been built. I stayed downstairs in the car. The agent showed the client the property. After that, they left. I went upstairs. I locked up. I left. So that happened, I think, two more times. So the third time, after the showing, the agent came downstairs to the client. I'm in my vehicle. I said, okay, thank you, bye. I walked upstairs as normal just to lock up the house. And I saw the agent coming back up the stairs. And he said, okay, so the client says they will take it. So I looked at him like, what you mean they'll take it? Like, take what? Like, they're going to buy the house. They're asking me for my lawyer's information. At that time, I have no lawyer. I don't know anything about that. So I was taken up. They're going to buy it? They're going to pay me that kind of money. I mean, it was a considerable sum to me at the time, because I know what I had in it and I know what I'm getting out of it.
So it's like
So
100% profit, at least.
at least,
At least 100%
100%
profit.
profit.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I said, okay, I tried to understand what was happening, and it wasn't, I couldn't really understand. So the next day, the agent calls me again for my lawyer's information. Again, I had to say to him, I don't know anything about that. So I called, I got a random lawyer at that time. So I called and they found out um, that they did the paperwork, they brought me in, they explained it to me. And in 1 week time, my attorney is telling me, you have a 10% deposit from me. They're going to hold it in escrow. So I'm like, what? And the check was, I mean, that kind of money for me at that time was a lot of money. So
Yeah.
the check came in, the accountants and the lawyers handled it. And I think it was 3 months. I got the balance of the money. And let me tell you something. So before that, I had to speak to Bank of St. Lucia, obviously, because they were the holding agent for the land. So I went
Yeah.
to them, I told them I was selling the property. So in their minds, I'm selling the land. So they said to me that the check has to be payable to them, blah, blah, the whole nine yards. So after the closing, I got the check. My attorney did the radiation. I brought it into Bank of St. Lucia. Bank of St. Lucia is watching me with this kind of face like, but we only give you money to buy land. How
Exactly.
is it
Yeah.
that amount? What was happening? So I said, no, I built on it. They couldn't understand. They thought I did some kind of thing to mortgage the properties with a different bank and all a whole nine yards. But it wasn't the case. And I'll tell you something, having that amount of money for the first time, I mean, in hindsight now is not as much, but
Yep.
it was like mind blowing, and from then on, well, I didn't check really at that. At that time, I thought, well, okay, I have enough money now to buy a piece of land and build a house and not owe anybody, and I'm done. I'm finished with this property investment
Right.
thing. I
Yeah.
have my
Yeah.
house
Yeah.
free. I done. So that was the plan until I rented a property in Boss Issue, I think it was. Yes, Boss Issue. And lo
Because
and
now you
behold,
sold
Mr.
your
Daya
house.
passed.
So you have a
Sorry?
house now you sold. So now you have to
I
go
have
and
no house.
rent.
I'm looking for rental now. So I rented
Right.
something at Boss Issue. It was compared to the house I had, it was small. It was a two-bedroom, those initial UDC houses. So it was a bit
Yeah.
small.
Yeah.
So one day, Mr. Dai passes by to give me something. So I told him I was at home. So he drove by home. When he saw the house, he looked at me and told me, buy it. Again, answer. I couldn't understand. I'm like, I had a house in Bonte. Why is this nice? You telling me now to buy that little house? Again, I didn't
You told him to sell
understand
the
what.
first house. Sell the first one
And he
and
told
now
me,
buy this one.
buy this one. So in my mind was like, what is this man up to? Buy this small house. I mean, my mind wasn't set, So again, after him speaking to me about it, I said, you know what? He gave me some points. He said, buy it, extend it, and you're fine. So I said, you know what? I made the owners an offer. They accepted it. And at that time, I said, I have some money, so I can write a check. So I
Yeah,
bought
yeah.
it all cash right off.
Yep,
You're
yep,
feeling
yep,
yourself a
yep.
little bit, right?
Yeah.
So after that happened, I said, you know what? I spoke to the same set of guys that initially started me off, the same crew, and we
Yeah, the
decided
construction crew.
we're going to extend the house all four ends. So I had the money at the time, so we started and we just expanded the house to the front, to the back, to the sides. So we made it 3 times the size it was, right? So now I
Wow.
ended up with 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. So I went a little bit bigger. And then again, our good friend, Miss Buchner, the agent,
Yes.
she decided she was an agent and she spoke to me about selling the house. And then that was it. We brought in some clients, some showings, and in 6 months, it was gone.
Interestingly, up to now, you've never thought of putting an income suite because you were still thinking of your own home.
Correct.
Now you're going to number 3. What you're thinking and your approach.
So now I'm taking a page from Mr. Dyer's book, which says location, location, location. So now I have 2 homes. I had 2 homes, so I have a sizable amount of money now. So I said to myself, you know what? Let's go one step further. Let's try to go into a different neighborhood. That's when I broached the property in Cap Estate, the lands in Cap Estate. That was the scariest journey for me because when I initially bought the land, I mean, the land compared to the properties that I had, that investment on just land was about 2 times, maybe 2.5 times the cost of the land in Cap Estate. I was a bit scared. I bought it anyway, but looking around at the kind of homes in Cap Estate, it had me a little unbalanced, wondering whether I could, do something of that sort. But it all worked out. We did number 3 in Cap Estate, and again, 6 months later, it was sold.
But number 3 was
Yeah.
a renovation, eh? It wasn't from new,
Number 2 was
from
a
a new build.
renovation. Number 3 was a new build. So number 1 and number 3 were new builds. Number 2 was the renovation. Yeah, so number 3, the client came in. So they wanted a vacation home, and it was well poised where they wanted it. So the first person who saw it bought it.
And
And then
in every
mhm,
case, you did not keep the house for more than 1 year or more
no,
than 18 months.
no, absolutely not. The first one was like maybe a 5 month window. The second was maybe 7 to 8 months, and the third one was 6 months.
What would you say to somebody listening to this now, saying to you, why do you want all that trouble? Why are you going through all this trouble 3 times already? It's too much.
Right. Well, for me, the biggest thing about that for me is the journey. I enjoy the journey. I enjoy the construction. So it's not really a hassle for me, right? Because remember, back then, I had a crew doing it. I wasn't with myself. And then an interesting thing is I got the third house. I got that house plan. And I decided, you know what, I've already paid for this plan. So why not recreate the house in a different location? Of course, with the permission of the architect who drew it, because you can't just
Yeah.
recreate the property. So I broached him again. He did all of the necessary documents with planning, and then we just decided to use that one plan, and we did something else. So that the journey began that way.
So after the third house, at what
Right.
point do you go to multifamily? And when do we meet and have the discussion, which we're going to talk about now? So you house number 3, you sell out. You're looking for location number 4 now.
Correct. So that was before we met you. So number 4 was a condo at Gate Park. That was a remodel as well. It was a foreclosure from the bank. I was scouring the internet and the papers for lands, and then I noticed that there was something in Gate Park. So I bought a condo there and did a full remodel, everything, the pool, the kitchens, everything painted, and it wasn't as big, but it was one of the most expensive properties. I think I had it for a little under a year, and then somebody wanted it, so I sold it. Then comes
I,
the one that I meet you at.
I'm then thinking at that time, you have your family, um,
Right.
you married, you have your partner, and you just taking up the people, uprooting them
But I
every
wasn't married
time.
yet. I still wasn't married
Yeah.
yet, but yeah, nonetheless,
But
I
your
had a
family with
family.
you. Yeah.
Correct.
And you are putting
But you
them
see,
every
the
time.
important thing is you must have somebody that's like-minded. Correct. And
Yes.
the island's so small. So, for example, my daughter would go to a school. I mean, no matter where you're on the island, it's still in a short distance from school. So you don't really uproot them. You just move locations, but everything is still the same. Somebody can still get to you. Your family can still. So, I mean, it was a journey, an exciting journey because guess what? Every year I live in a different house. So there's that.
So so now you've done new um reno,
Correct. Yes,
expansion,
mhm,
condo. So your
correct.
next project now, next house. So you sold 4 houses already.
Yeah, so we went to South Hills, and that's where I met you. That fantastic lot with the view of the Pigeon Island, and I mean the water views were just phenomenal. I think that's where we met and we started to discuss property. I think you were doing Marcel Ridge at that time as well. Or did you start? I'm not sure. Something of that sort. So that's when we met. And then you broached that idea of multi-family to me. And I'm like, boy, nah, that won't work for me. At that time, I was thinking, you know what? It's my own space. I want nobody living next to me. I want no complaints. So I'm right there. So if there are any issues, I'm right there. So they could, physically trouble me. So I didn't want to hurt. Again, I have that kind of tendency. When you give me something new, I tend to have to process it a little before I decide, all right, let's try that.
Now let's talk
Um,
about South Hills because
tell me.
that was a new kind of concept for me. It
Right.
was the first time I'd seen, up close and personal, a 4 bedroom house with
Mm-hmm.
a granny kind of suite, lockaway granny suite at the bottom
Almost
downstairs, but also
correct.
two masters, and it was a reproduction of a plan that you'd done before. And I got
Right.
to understand all of the efficiencies from from mastering one concept, but also you tell me you need to give more. You always
Mm-hmm.
need to give a little more to your
True.
client, and that was the secret to actually your success. Then,
Correct. Correct. So for me, so I started to do it on my own now, right? So I started up a small crew, doing it under my name. So the savings that I would have had, I can pass it on to the client. So that's why I was able to like flip quickly because you have a certain value put on the property by the valuators, but there's a certain amount that it cost me as the builder. So when I sell it to the third party, you always have some equity immediately because I wouldn't say that market value. I said less than market value. So you get it. It's an attractive deal. A house is worth, for example, $800,000. You sell it for seven, so it moves quicker. That was the whole recipe.
so remember, you set up property manager. At what point in time did you decide, you know what, I'm ready to go on my own? And that's the dream for a lot of us. We say,
Right.
own my time. I have a skill. I want to move from what
Yes.
I'm doing. I'm grateful for the opportunity, but now it's time for me to put on my big boy pants, my boots, and do my own
Correct.
thing.
Correct. So that was the South Hills property. Um, so at that time, you have no more loans, you have no more mortgages. You have property debt free. So I thought about it, and we discussed multifamily after what I met
Yes.
with you, like multifamily, and then we
Yes.
started to plan together for multifamily. And again, I wanted to take advantage of the tourist industry. So because Airbnb was a thing on the island, Airbnb, Booking.com. So I'm like, you know what,
Booming.
do this. But the interesting thing is, I could not have done that and have, well, I never had a 9 to 5 because as a property manager, you have a 24 hours a day. Your security will call you at
Right, right.
12 in the evening. You have to get up, go check on what's the problem because your responsibility at the end of the day is the property. So I spoke with my boss. It was a hard conversation to have, but we had it nonetheless. Um, he took it all right up to the like today. I mean, as my biggest fan, I speak with him every week. Yeah, so we're good. At that point, we have a solid relationship. He calls me, I call him. We're good. But I found that for me to take that next step, I can't be tied down to a job per se. I needed to be there. So after I sold South Hills, I decided to try multifamily, and then I went on my own.
So that's the discussion. That's an important discussion, important point in the discussion. I'd always been doing multifamily before. I'd done 2 buildings multifamily, and I was trying to convince you that
Correct.
when you build one structure as you have been doing, to do
Mhm.
another structure or an income suite is not double the price. And most people don't know that it might be a 20% more or
Yes.
25% more on your mortgage, but you can
Right.
get almost 50% of the mortgage paid just from doing an income
Right.
suite. And we, for a long time, we debated that because at that time I was also, you know, it was challenging. It's
Right.
the multifamily, especially if you go 5, 6, 7 units. There's a heavy cash requirement, cash injection. It's a lot more. And what I got to appreciate about your approach was that you were taking on projects that, yes, it doesn't have 2 or 3 or 4, but it's manageable. You
Right.
relax, you can breathe, you're not stressed, and we almost swapped. So I then downgraded my duplex plan to a single unit. I almost lodged it in planning, and then you then were going to go to 2 units. So we had an
Correct.
exchange. In the end, I still couldn't do one. I still went a month later and changed it back. But you kept to the multifamily. So tell us about your first multifamily project.
Right. So it's Villa Pourier. We did initially. So one of the biggest things for me is learning that the major branded hotels, Sandals, wherever you are, the concessions that they can get from the government is accessible to us. So I learned that from you. I mean, we had this meeting. You said to me, "But Darren, you could go to the government if you're doing at least a 6 room unit. The
Correct?
concession granted to you, duty-free concessions, VAT exempt concessions, property taxes. There's a lot of things that are there to the locals, but we have to do the research in essence.
Yep.
So after we did that, I remember I had the meeting with my tourism officer. She gave me the requirements. I met with you. Then we did a plan. We lodged it in. I spoke to our friend, the architect. He dropped the plans. We got them approved, and then I got the call from the Ministry of Tourism that my concessions are approved. So I'm like,
Amazing.
that's great.
Amazing.
That's fantastic. It saves a lot of money on
It
materials
does.
and import furnitures or whatever it is. So we got that, and decided to build Villa Pourier. Um, it is
Duplex.
it was on 2 levels. Yes, it was on 2 levels. The top level of the penthouse was a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, self-contained. Well, it's like a home because it is about 2,300 square feet a floor, right? And the middle floor we mirrored, right? We mirrored. So when you look at the middle and the top floor, they're mirrored, right? So we did that. 3 bedrooms upstairs, 3 bedroom downstairs. We started the Airbnb thing. It was a hit. It was just great. We always had guests in. So the money was starting to flow in, and then I decided, you know what? Well, before that, I strategically placed the building in a location where I could get 3 floors. So I said to myself, you know what? If that thing Ansem trying to preach to me does not work, I can sell the building at 2 floors. But if it works, I can add an additional income suite on the ground floor. So after about a year, I think it worked really well. So I commissioned the ground floor. So now we have 3 floors. Yeah, and it's going well. It's going well. Can't complain.
Is it okay for us to say that the ground floor actually is inhabited by a special person?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely,
and the ground
absolutely.
floor means there's no mortgage payment. You
None.
understand? And
None.
and I think it was just amazing seeing the transformation of the lot to the structure, and then to know that actually you can actually live there. For me, I get
Correct.
excited about that, and I know from the initial feedback we've received from a lot of persons so far for the last three podcasts,
Hmm.
there is almost an undertone, but you can do that, or you guys can do that because of XYZ. But it's important. That's what we want to share. That it where you see people now, we didn't always start
No.
that level, but and that's why we're doing the podcast. So everybody can start where they at, which brings us to probably the most important question of the interview so far. Looking at all of the projects that you've done, what would you
Yes.
say, maybe your top two, top three biggest challenges that you face in that journey that you've been on?
The biggest challenge for me was, as usual, is material on the island. That's the biggest challenge I faced. Um, we have a chain of hardware stores where you can never find everything in one location. So you have the better part of your day is just scouring from store to store, trying to find materials to do what you needed to do. That was the biggest challenge. I think with all contractors, I think that's one of our biggest challenges is just finding the materials when you need, so the delays don't happen.
In our discussion, what about availability of land and financing? These two issues.
Um, Boy, land, as I always say, there'll always be a deal, right? You have to hit the
You
ground
taught you
running. You
taught me
can't,
that.
yeah.
You taught me that. It's
Right.
always a deal.
When somebody gives you a deal of a lifetime, there's always another deal around the corner. You know that kind of thing. So I'll tell persons, do your research, do your homework. You remember, I would jump in my vehicle and just drive. Just drive, look at for sale signs, look at this, look at that. Anybody can do it, But you see, I think most persons, when they have a home, that's it. They only see that as the top of the level for them, owning a home. Most persons wouldn't think of, all right, I have X, Y into this home. Let me sell it. Let me spin it. Let me do an income suite. Most person will just be fine at saying, okay, I owe the bank for 20, 25, 30 years. And they're fine with it. But there's one lesson that a security guard taught me, um, which it changed my outlook, I would say. So when I was property manager for the Orange Park Commercial Center, we had this gentleman. He was, I think, in his mid 60s, and he was doing night watchman. He came into work from 6 in the evening till 7:30 the next morning. And I can see at 60 something at that time, you're taking a toll on him. So I had a discussion with him. I asked him, so why just retire? Why you doing that? You know what he said to me? The mortgage is not finished. After the mortgage is finished,
Wow.
then he could retire.
Wow.
So that little thing sparked something in me. And I said to myself, you know what? That's why I bought the piece of land and I only took a 9 year loan and I decided to build the house slowly, albeit it took me a year and a half. That's fine. At the end of the day, I knew it was mine and I only had a 9 year. So being at that job, I think it was the integral part in my success or the success that I have presently. And speaking to that security guard, that really touched me because imagine you leaving your house every afternoon, 4:30, 5 o'clock to get to work for 6:30, and you have to stay up at 65. You have to stay up until 7:30 the next morning, then go home, do whatever you have to do. And it was challenging because I could see taking a toll on him, but he had no choice. He had to do it. The mortgage was going to be due at the end of every month, and he had to pay it. So that was his journey, and my journey was started basically from his story, and it continued until I am where I am now.
I think it's important to point out when you left the property management function, you actually opened your own construction company called Structure Inc., which married two of your passions.
Right,
One which is your construction of your own stuff, as well as
right,
your property investing. That how has your view changed as a property investor with the acquisition and formation of a construction company for other people now?
boy, that's a big question. I always said to myself, Darren, you're not going to do anything for anybody. You're only going to do this for yourself. because I know some persons, especially if you don't understand the whole construction atmosphere, um, you could be, I can't even figure out the word. So I transitioned from doing it for myself, and because persons saw what I did for myself, they saw the product, they saw the value. So a very good friend of mine, very good, was the first client that I had. Um, so I did something for him, and after that, I just said to myself, you know what, go out there, do it for other persons. So I did it for him. I did for you, ironically, and a few other persons, and we still going. I can't turn back because for me, construction is not something that I wouldn't take it as a job per se, although it is, but it's something I enjoy doing. So for me, on a Sunday afternoon, I have no worries or no stress to say, boy, tomorrow is Monday, back to work. It's something that I enjoy doing. So I can't wait for tomorrow to go on site because there are certain things that we need to get done. So the journey, I mean, everybody has their own journey, but I think for me, mine come in full square with property management until property ownerships and management as well, because I have to run my own property as well.
My last question for you. So you have your existing Villa Pourier in
Correct.
operation, rentals. What are your future plans as relates to creating new structures and new projects for your own business?
So I already have the approved plans for Villa Poirier 2. Again, it will still be in the Capacity vicinity. Um, we should break ground within 5 months, because I have a few ongoing projects, and for me, I like whatever I do to have my full attention. So I don't want to be one who have 5, 6 projects going on and then
Yeah.
persons and project gets left behind. So we're going to start that in about 6 months. It'll be a same three floor complex. We just want to get a little bit bigger and better. So we're going to put a small gymnasium for our clients. We're going to put the pool.
Wow.
We're going to do it a little better. You learn at every stage. You learn more. So that's what's next for me personally, an additional building, 3 floors.
What advice you have for anybody watching the show now across the Caribbean, and thinking of going to property investing? What advice you have for them?
So I tell anybody, don't get comfortable in your space. Don't. So the only thing you should form attachments to are your family members. Yeah,
Wow.
a building, you shouldn't form any attachments to it. I had a few of them, and the first one was a little bit tough, but when you look at the rewards, it outweighs the negative. Imagine owning a building or a string of buildings, and you have one of them that you live in for free. Just imagine that. So at the end of the month, you have no worries that the bank would knock on your door and then repossession, those kind of things. Because the climate we're in now, look at COVID. It's brought a lot of things to light. What's happening? So I would tell anybody who is interested, wet their feet. Start something small. Try to sell what you have if you have it, or look for a piece of land, sit on it, gather up some income, slowly build. If you need to take a loan, try to take a loan maybe to the end to do the finishes. So it's not as difficult. If something were to arise, you're still able to pay for it, and then try to sell it. Don't grow attachments. I only grow attachments to my family and my friends. Other than that, you want it, hey, it's for sale.
Well done. Thank you so much for
No.
sharing this amazing story with us. This has been our longest podcast. Typically, we go 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Now, I think we're 40 minutes. You said
Right.
some really, really powerful things. And what normally my takeaway, I go from the beginning and kind of pull out the key kind of salient points. But I want to start from the end, which is
Mhm.
don't get comfortable in your space. Do not
Correct.
grow emotional attachments to any material possession. Only be attached to
Absolutely.
your family and your friends. And clearly,
Correct.
you were the beneficiary of the exposure to a mentor and somebody who had done it on a large scale. But that did
Correct.
not necessarily mean that you'd have taken on board all of the advice. Sometimes we are
Hmm.
pushed in situations. Sometimes situations present themselves to us, and we don't see it for what they are. But if you have that
Right.
mentality of always trying to be better and starting small, like you said, that's where most of us
Absolutely.
started. So
Yes, that's
I want to thank you for sharing that experience with us. And want to remind our viewers, thank you again for taking time to watch the podcast. Remember, we're available on all platforms, all podcast apps, as well as at Caribbean Property Investing. Until next time, everybody needs a place to live. See you next week.
Congratulations and thank you for tuning in to the Caribbean's first property investing podcast. We want to help Caribbean people create wealth and achieve financial freedom through property investing. Our show provides general advice based on personal experiences and is for educational purposes only. For more information, resources, and past episodes, visit us at CaribbeanPropertyInvesting.com. Remember to click the subscribe button so you never miss a show. Let's go.